whiteboard. So you should take your note, you know, whatever I am discussing, so that the material would be with you when you go for preparation for the exam. I hope all of you are able to see my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so in the last class we talked about the different appurtenances, and then in today's class what we are going to discuss is maintenance, cleaning, and ventilation of sewers. So why these are important, we'll be talking about them. So first, let me write maintenance, cleaning, and ventilation of sewers. So among these three, first we'll be talking about maintenance. Why maintenance is necessary? Sewer maintenance usually involves their cleaning to keep them free from any sort of clogging, and to carry out all the repairs required for the damaged portion, if there is any, because of operation and all, so as to prolong their service life and ensure efficient functioning. So this is very important, and that is why the proper maintenance of sewers is absolutely necessary in order to make the storage system function with full efficacy. The sewer maintenance generally includes: number one, frequent inspection and supervision. Frequent inspection and supervision. Number two, it includes measuring of rate of flow, measuring of rate of flow, cleaning, and most importantly, flushing, and then repairing of leaks of joints and any other damaged part. So the entire maintenance work consists of these four very important aspect. And the most general complaint which is received in respect to efficient functioning is the clogging, and that has immediate impact. If there is a clogging, then there is a problem in the discharge. So the sewers get blocked or clogged due to the silting and deposition of the debris, grit, and other floating matter present in the sewage. Now you may ask a question, sir, actually we are trying to maintain self-cleansing velocity, then why to consider this clogging with that importance or significance? Now, the answer of this question is, though we try to design the sewers so that the flow happens in at a self-cleansing velocity at least once in a day. However, there will be some continuous siltation which would take place, and this silting is more pronounced, at low discharges and in sewers laid on the flatter gradients. And this is the unavoidable part, and that is why maintenance is very much required. And when maintenance should have same emphasis as you do in case of construction of the sewers. Now, apart from that, greasy and oily matters from kitchens of different, eateries, hotels, restaurants, and sometimes from industries, they create, some sticky material, or which is actually uh, kind of sticky, or which can create float. So because of that, it attracts all the floating matter and create a bigger chunk out of it, and those attributes towards the clogging of the sphere. And that is why we need to take care properly, and we need to have oil and grease trap as an appurtenances. So that can also be an important appurtenances depending upon what type of sewage or wastewater you are going to expect. Now, several times the general public, if you see, throw domestic waste garbages into the manhole directly. And what happens is, if a plastic full of some waste is thrown that way, that can create some blockage in the sewer pipes. So that is why it is always suggested to use garbage dumping at homes, or maybe in the dustbin, so that this kind of problems can be taken care of. uh, the solid waste is a very different thing than the liquid waste which we are discussing. And if we throw solid waste into the sewers which are supposed to carry the liquid waste, it creates havoc problem in the overall operation of those sewers. So that is why we need to have despite of having so many different precautions which we take, we need to have very stringent maintenance schedule for the proper and efficient functioning of the entire sewer systems. Now, with this, I'll move to the next part, that is the cleaning of sewers. So, cleaning of sewers is also very important. From the previous discussion, you might be understanding that cleaning of sewers. So sewers should be periodically cleaned to avoid the complete clogging. So the main concern is the clogging, fine. So, and at the same time, there should be proper monitoring of the you know uh, silting operations and desilting operations, because how much silting is happening, and how much desiltation you are inducing, depending upon that, overall chances of clogging will increase or decrease. Now, for cleaning small spheres which cannot be entered into by manual labor, flushing operations are essential. You people might be realizing by now. So, a flexible fire hose with about 2.5 centimeter or less sized nozzle can be inserted down, and then water with water discharge with under pressure would be applied over there to create a flushing effect. Now the water pressure stiffens the rubber hose pipes, and together with the support from the sides of the sewers make it possible to push the hose in and out in the sewer by 30 meter or more. And that by doing that, you can actually take care of the clogging part. So wherever the construction of manhole is not possible, or manual cleaning is not possible, flushing is a very good option, or has been turned out to be flushing. Fine. So flushing is a very good option. So it can take care up to a certain extent as far as cleaning is concerned. On the other hand, medium-sized sewers are generally cleaned by using scraping instruments. So we have discussed before, regarding the scraping, and which are dragged through the sewer. So a commonly used device consists of a steel cylinder of 20 to 25 centimeter, and the diameter of 20 to 25 centimeter diameter, and 60 to 75 centimeter long. Fine. So scraping device. Just 1 second. So the dimension of the scraping device, which we are discussing, that is a steel cylinder. So dia is about 20 to 25 centimeter, and length is 60 to 75 centimeter. Fine. And now this type of sware cleaning rod is called as cane rodding, and is dragged in the sware to and fro from the manholes. And by doing this operation, the clogging can be taken care of. So, and apart from that, in some developed nations, we have pills uh, that have been used successfully for cleaning badly clogged spheres. So spills are nothing but a series of light floating wooden or rubber hollow balls, and such balls rolled into the sphere, and it gets stuck up at the place where the heavy deposition has taken place, and it that therefore it constricts the passage, thereby raising the velocity of the flow in its neighboring area and thus covering out the deposited silt. So what exactly it is doing is it is increasing the height within the sphere itself, head, increasing head, and that would increase eventually the velocity of the switch. And by doing that, the scouring velocity can be achieved, and once we achieve that, the portion will be, actually the deposition would be eroded. So these are the different way by which, and in case of large size spheres, which can be where manual operation can be done. So usually men are manual labor. Actually, they when they go inside those kind of large size spheres and manually they create. Now the sweepers do actually enter into the sphere pipes and remove the deposited materials by hand shovels, and collect it back in the buckets to remove it outside the manhole. However, while doing this operation, sufficient precautions and care must be taken while entering the sewers, because you may have sometimes toxic foul gases or explosive gases, and that might be very hazardous for the health of the workers who are actually entering into the sewer pipes. So that because of that, you should ensure that those kind of situations are not prevailing, and once you can ensure that, you can allow your worker to move there and do the necessary operations. Now there are few precautions which are very important and should be taken while moving into the large sized spheres. Precautions to be taken while entering spheres. Fine. So main thing is various poisonous and explosive gases. That's the main culprit, you can say. Fine. Various poisonous or explosive which get generated. So we have hydrogen sulfide, H2S, we have carbon dioxide, and we have methane. This is absolutely deadly, and along with petrol vapors. So we have And so these are the type of gases which will be there, and these gases are largely produced, when the sewage gets stale and septic, which more commonly happens in case of hotter climates. And in case of in addition to that, production of these hazardous gases, oxygen gets consumed by the organic matter in their putrefaction, and thus, or decomposition, we would say, and thus resulting in the shortage of oxygen inside the sphere, and that may consequently create huge difficulty in breathing of those labors, and that is why the ventilation of spheres is generally adopted. It is very, very important to avoid such scenarios. So various methods are adopted for the ventilating the sewers, and those we'll be discussing subsequently in today's class. Uh, so what are the precautions? Let me tell you. So the first is the very first precaution which should be taken before entering a sewer through the manhole is to open the cover of the manhole in and open the cover of the manhole in question, as well as the covers of two manholes, one on the upstream, other one is the downstream, at least half an hour in advance. So opening of the cover of consecutive two manholes. So this is the first precaution needs to be taken. Second is, now tests should be carried out to detect the presence of any hazardous gases inside that. So test for hazardous gases. Number 3, presence of CO2 gas may be detected by lowering a minor safety lamp near the level of sewage in the manhole. So if the flame extinguishes within 5 minutes, the presence of oxygen CO2 can be indicated. So test for presence of CO2, and then the presence of methane. So that is another one. So the presence of methane can be detected. Test for presence of methane. Fine. And it create an explosive mixture with air. So that is why it is important to know whether methane is present over there or not. And usually this is methane is lighter than air, you all know, and that is why it usually prevails in the upper layers of the spheres. So when the gas is present, it forms an explosive mixture with air, and the gas cylinder of the uh, safety lamp gets filled with the flame. The lamp should be withdrawn immediately. The formation of flames will indicate that the presence that the methane is present over there in the sphere. So once these things are done, if there is no hazardous gases present, then what is done is a lighted lantern, maybe lower down in the manhole so as to test the presence of oxygen. If it burns brilliantly, the sphere can be safe to enter. So now next part is test for presence of oxygen. This is very good for us, or conducive to do the operation. And after that, the workers are actually free to go in the inspection, and after going through all the safety norms and precautions, they can go in. Inside the where smoking or any sort of naked lighting is not allowed. It's strictly prohibited because it can create devastating explosions. So, and necessary warning signals should be erected. So these are the different precautions which are taken. Next comes the ventilations of spheres. Why ventilations is important, we have already discussed. So ventilation of spheres. So the sewers must be ventilated properly. The first one is the because of the decomposition and the putrefaction of sewage inside the sewers, it may result in generating of several sewer gases. Those gases I have mentioned before. You have ammonia, nitrogen, and then ammonia, nitrogen, and all the different gases, hazardous and explosive gases we have discussed before. Now these gases are deposited off into the atmosphere by exposing the sewage out to the outside atmosphere. And what is done is, the main idea is, by the help of this ventilation tool, you can reduce down the concentration, and slowly whatever gas would get generated would be diffused in the atmosphere. And by doing this, you can keep the concentration less than the alarming one, and that would actually mm, help to maintain proper operation as well, because worker would be able to enter the sewers, and they can work, they can do all the operations smoothly. Now another reason for ventilating sewer is to ensure a continuous flow of sewage inside the sewer. Now this is achieved by ventilation, by keeping the surface of the sewage in contact with the free air, and thus preventing it from any airlocks in the sewage. So just choking of the sewage can be avoided if you actually provide proper ventilations. So we have mm, different ventilation method of ventilation. We'll be discussing them. So the methods. So the first one is use of ventilating columns. Use of ventilating columns. So basically these columns are kind of, you will see, sorry. So let us say this is the area, and this is the foundation block. You have here the so what happens is, through which the gases comes, and then it goes up. Here you have a cowl. This is known as cowl, and what happens is, this particular portion is connected with the sewers. So this is connected with the sewers. So we'll write from sewers. And you can have here street lights, and here you have street lights, depending upon those will actually add the aesthetics. Here you have road, here you have footpath. So this is road, this is footpath, and this is the ventilating column. So in order to achieve proper ventilation, ventilating columns or shafts are generally placed with an intervals of 150 to 300 meter. This is the 150 to 300 meter is the interval between one ventilating columns to another one. And they are also provided with upper end of branch sewer, and also at the every change in the size of the sewers. So a typical vertical column used for ventilating the sewers, you can see here, nothing, the main part is nothing but a ventilating shaft or column, and through which the rising gases comes moves towards the atmosphere. And it consists of vertical shaft made by joining cast iron or steel pipe, and there will be a foundation block, and that will provide the required stability for the standing of the ventilation column. Now, apart from that, we have the next one is use of ventilating manhole covers, use of ventilating manhole covers. Now this part we have discussed before. Whenever we have manhole covers, so you can see some perforation, right? So manhole covers are provided with perforations through which the sphere gets exposed to the atmosphere. Now this will no doubt help in achieving some ventilation, but will cause more, you know, nuisance as the bad smells continue to emit from them. Moreover, the opening of the manhole cover will permit admitting large quantities of storm water to go into the main sewer. So this method is therefore of not practical utility, except that it may be adopted in very isolated places. So uh, though you will see wherever we have manhole cover, they are perforated. However, considering all those limitations associated with this ventilating manhole covers, this is not adapted for usual practices. So for any isolated place or remote place, this kind of ventilation can be adopted. Next is the proper design of spheres. So this is very important, and this is the fundamental one. Proper designing of the spheres. So the spheres should be properly designed as running half or two-third full, thus reserving the top space of the sphere gases. And the velocity in the spheres would be within the limit of self-cleansing velocity and the covering velocity, and so that sphere swage is not staying in one point for longer periods of time. So these are the aspects which actually should be followed strictly to maintain enough ventilation within the sphere system. Sometimes we can have we can use mechanical devices. So forced draught is sometimes provided by exhaust fans to expel out the foul gas from the sewers, and this method requires mechanical supervision and as well as the skilled labor. So number 4 he is a mechanical device. And so what is does is the mechanical devices are analogous to the exhausters. So through exhaust fan, the the toxic or the foul gases are actually expelled out in the atmosphere. Next is, so sometimes in case of stormwater drains or sewers, they can also be act as a partial ventilators, because during the dry season or in the winter when your precipitation is very less, so the some amount of air will come in contact with the sewage through this stormwater drainage. So that can also be considered as partial ventilators. Fine. Next is house vent and soil pipes. So they may directly help in ventilating house drains and public spheres, particularly where the interceptors are not provided in the spheres connecting houses and buildings. So from the house vent and soil pipe, you might be seeing it. They actually directly contribute to the ventilation aspect of the sphere system. And finally, we have the artificial ventilation. So Artificial ventilation is resorted to at site before entering a sewer by blowing fresh air supply into the sewer through the mechanical means such as air blowers, and that would, what it does is it will consist of some motors that will provide, some air blow, and that will be suspended into the sewer, and the blower should preferably be, situated a little away from the opening, so that it may not act as a source of ignition for inflammable gas in the sewers. So this kind of artificial ventilation is provided sometimes when all other methods which we discussed before are not suitable, just to maintain the proper ventilations. So with this, we'll wind up this particular section, and if you check your syllabus, you will understand that we have already finished the uh, section 3. Fine, now we'll be considering or unit 3. So now we'll have one more uh, unit to discuss.